I've been getting a lot of requests lately for a sip and paint party, so I decided to put together an espresso martini sip and paint kit, and it features everything you'll need to host your very own party from home. So for this painting, I'm going to use my size 8 round brush and my size 2 rigger brush. And these are both sable brushes, and they work really well for watercolors. I have some clean water and my watercolor paints. I have an opaque white or a gouache, Indian red, light red, and sepia. I usually recommend using artist grade watercolors, but since this is for a sip and paint party, it's not necessary unless you want to. So first I'm going to load up my brush with water, and I'm just going to paint around the edge of my stem. We're going to start with a wet on wet technique, and we're going to just drop in some pigment, and we don't need this to be perfect. And I'm going to start by dropping in some of my Indian red, and you can see that the paint goes where your paper is wet. I'm going to add in a little bit of light red in here. Just loosely paint it in and give it that wet look. And some of my sepia. You want to be careful not to overwork it. And now we'll do the other side of the glass. And sip and paint parties are really fun to host for a girls' night in, or the start of your bachelorette party, or even for a bridal brunch. Using the same colors on this side and the same effect. I'm going to just loosely paint it in. And it gives it that nice wet look. Now this would be the perfect opportunity to sip, because we want to let this dry before we move on to the next step. Now you can speed up your drying process with a hair dryer if you like, or you can just take this opportunity to socialize a little bit with your friends. So we're going to test this with the back of our finger to make sure that it's dry, and it is. And now we're going to start layering in color. I'm going to wet this block here. I'm going to dilute some of my Indian red so that it has more water than pigment, because I want just a light wash in this area. And while this area dries, we will move on to another area. And the reason for this is because if we paint right next to this with a darker color, it will bleed in, and I want that nice hard edge there. So once again, we're going to lay down a little bit of water. And I'm using sepia for the base of my glass. And I'll be painting in sepia in other areas of my glass as well. And it's okay if you make a mistake, you can just dry off the brush with your finger and just lift the paint. In this part of my glass, I'm just doing a wet on dry technique. And what that means is we're just using the pigment, our watercolor paint, directly on dry paper. I'm gonna add a little bit of water in this area. And still using the sepia. I'm gonna add a medium wash of the sepia. And your glass isn't flat, it has reflection. So this is what we're adding in right here, is the reflection from the light and the dark that your glass might be picking up from your room. Go crazy with this. This is a party, so it's meant to be fun. Add your own personality. You can even make it splashy if you like. Now my coffee bean, I want areas of it to be dark, but I also don't want it to look flat. But you can do that if you like. Giving mine a little dimension. There's no right or wrong way to do this. That's dry enough to move on to this area. I'm going to use a little bit darker wash of my Indian red for this side. And you can just lay down a flat wash because we will be building on this. And you can add your brush strokes, giving them a little bit of a curve if you like, because your glass is curved. So we're going to let this dry. We have a little space in between here, and we'll focus more. Get that cat hair off. We're going to do the same here and add a light wash of kind of the creamy froth. That makes a espresso martini so yummy. So I'm using my gouache mixed in. You can mix it in with a little bit of your Indian red or your light red. Either is fine. And again, we're just going to add a light layer. Just warm it up a little bit on this side. I'd love to see everybody's espresso martinis. If you like to share, tag me at Do Tell a Bell. So while this is drying, I'm going to play around with my stem a little bit because this is completely dry. And we don't have to worry about any of the colors bleeding in to each other. I'm going to darken up that edge a little bit by just adding a nice stroke of my sepia. And this is dry, so we can focus on this area of our glass. And this is the back part of the rim. I'm going to use an ever so light wash of my sepia. So this has a lot of water mixed in with it and just a little bit of the pigment. Now you can do this with watercolor, or you can play around with glitter gel pens. So now I want to add in some deepness in this area. Art is all about expressing oneself. So with my sepia, I'm going to move my glass out of the way. With my sepia, I'm just adding in a darker shade. That is more representative of the liquid that's in the glass. And I'm going to leave this area as part of the reflection on the glass. And feel free to get as detailed as you like or as simple as you like. It's still a little wet, so we're gonna let it dry. Next, we're going to paint in this little layer. And it's going to be darker than this and lighter than that. So I'm gonna mix up some of my Indian red with my white. And just paint in the layer. Dilute that a little bit. Paint this side in. And we're going to go ahead and paint our espresso martini inside the glass. I'll wet this area with some clean water. Bring it all the way over to the other side of that cream. Just drop in a little bit of pigment and help it along a little bit just to fill in these areas. I'm gonna add some sepia. Now when this dries, I'm going to paint in my cream and give you a little bonus that I think will be fun for this project. So we'll give this a little bit to dry. Now that this is dry, we're going to go ahead and just add in a little bit of pigment for our cream. You can just follow along the line there. And if it turns out to be too dark like that one, you can just remove the water from your brush and just lift the paint. It's like magic. Now it turns out I never really used my rigger brush, but we will be using it for this next part. What we're going to do is we're going to make our brush really wet and pick up some of our sepia and then just add some sprinkles. And there you have it. An easy and fun espresso martini watercolor that you can paint at your next sip and paint. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more weekly watercolor tutorials. Your support helps me bring more creative projects like this one to life. Happy painting and see you next time.